So do you think, I mean, from your vantage point at Wharton, one of the most renowned program, institutions,
I'm sorry, you said the most renowned
well,
business institutions, right?
I,
That's what I thought I heard you say.
yeah, you know, the most. Okay. So let me go back to kind of the value proposition of the MBA or the executive education programs. These are obviously big parts of your program, and other business schools. You talked about some of the challenges other institutions have, and you said, well, you're well positioned in that, but has the value proposition changed, and how do you change what you do to fulfill that?
So one of the questions that I was asked most frequently when I first assumed the leadership at Wharton was, what does the value of the MBA still exist? And why is that an important degree to have? And at first, when I heard that question, the first few times I dismissed it like, that's crazy talk. But the more I was asked that, the more I started to understand why people were asking that. And it's not just business education, it's higher education in general that is really being threatened, or at least people are questioning the value proposition. So as a business educator, the thing that I think is most valuable that people understand is that for any great society, business and commerce is at the core of it. And if we don't fully understand and appreciate the role and the value that commerce and business plays in the development and sustaining of economies and of societies, then I think we're a fundamentally different world. So it's important to set that as the foundation for the value proposition, why it's important. Then I think also, if you look at the individual, there are some people, way too many people in this country and around the world, who don't have an understanding of how resources and how money influences everything, including their own personal financial situation. And if we talk about wanting to create opportunities for wealth generation, if you don't have a grounding in how that happens, then you're going to continue to be sort of at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think business education in particular is absolutely vital. I would also say that business education, while we are phenomenal at solving some great challenges and problems, increasingly the complexity of our world demands that we are in collaboration with other academic disciplines. So it's business and technology, or business and engineering, business and medicine, business and the arts. So, and there's a lot of value that business can provide to the nonprofit sector as well. So business in collaboration with other disciplines, I think, is another direction that is continuing to advance the value proposition of how we're creating merit and why it's worthy to pursue business education.
It's interesting the way you describe that, because a lot of the work we in the Fed do around community development and creating really healthy and vibrant economies that is exactly what you just said. It's about combining the various aspects. It's not about one versus the other. It's about having all these work together, whether it's in health or business or in the nonprofit sector. So that I think that fits well into a lot of what we've been seeing too in our work. Now you mentioned innovation, and for me personally, before the pandemic, I had not used, video calls very much. And then I went through the Skype stage and the Zoom stage, the Teams, the WebEx. So how do you think about innovation at Wharton and how that's changing education, not only today, but, into the future?
So innovation is one of the 3 pillars of the strategic plan that we've put in place over the last few years. And for me, it's not only how we deliver our education, how do we innovate in that, leveraging the investments in technology that I just described, but it's also what is the content? And we need to be as innovative in what we're teaching as we were in how we're teaching it. And so the what is a lot around the collaboration and finding ways to partner with other disciplines to solve creatively new problems. The what is recognizing that, and I know we're going to get to questions probably on AI and machine learning, et cetera, but it really is, how do we bring that into the curriculum in new and interesting ways to prepare the next generation of people who are going to be working for all the firms and places that you're a part of. And the what is, so Wharton's legacy is largely in the world of finance. But as I've said to our faculty, if we pull out the case studies that we taught 20 years ago around financial markets and Citibank, for example, like that world has changed. And so it really is thinking, even in something that we know best, how is that field? How is that discipline? How is that sector changing? And how do we make sure that we're putting into our curriculum all of the new ways in which the sector is changing? So financial technology, for example, is one of the things that we're investing in to make sure that we are consistently on top of the new ways in which commerce is
right. And you see this everywhere, right? With whether it's fintechs, where you think of digital assets and all the different innovation that's happening in the world of finance and things. I mean, one thing that, when I briefly taught at another graduate school of business, one thing that came up very loud and clear is the value of being around the other students. One person said that, John, they're not here to see you. They're here to learn from each other. And maybe I'm the one who's just providing the content around that. Has that been challenged in the kind of, as we've gone to more hybrid models? And you mentioned, there's a kind of like with the club, we can bring people from all around the world, but a little bit less of that in the room experience. Or how do you think about that?
So what I've observed is that motivated young people have a lot of ingenuity. Mm-hmm. And so there are real advantages to having a hybrid educational experience. For example, it serves the flexibility that they need. It serves those kinds of things. But they also recognize the value in being together in some kind of setting, face to face. And so they have been remarkably creative in finding ways to build and sustain relationships, even if they're operating in a largely hybrid or completely virtual format. So I think it's right to be mindful of that, because there is the power of connection. I think we've seen this post the pandemic, the need that people have to be in community together is strong, and it will continue to be strong. And I think people are just finding more creative ways to do that if it's not the day-to-day sitting in a classroom experience.
So let's talk a little bit about how the world has also changed around how people imagine their career progression. In the past, it might have been a typical view of you go to college, then you get work experience, and then you maybe get an MBA. So is that changing? Is it more of a kind of continuous process of education? And how does that affect full-time MBA students versus other ways that you see students coming through your programs?
Yeah. So the need for that model to change, I think, is definitely clear, and we're starting to see around the edges that happening within the context of formal education, particularly higher education. As you advance in your careers and you become more exposed to new areas of content that you need to know in order to continue to advance and meet the needs of your organization, the need for education to come back into your life is growing considerably. And so schools like Wharton and probably that other school that you were referring to are very intentional.
Now, to not be named. 2,500 miles to the west.
We've been very intentional to make sure that we are providing education for the lifespan. So at Wharton, for example, we have a significant exposure to young people, younger than like pre-college age students. So we have a global youth program that serves thousands of people in residence during the summer, but then tens of thousands of people virtually around the world. And those are high school kids who are now being exposed to business content, analytics, they're being exposed to entrepreneurship, et cetera. And so that getting them at that stage might influence what they would have considered as a part of their collegiate experience or professional trajectory longer term. At the opposite end, we are meeting with executives who are 40 and 50 years old, and they're realizing
you mean the very young,
who are realizing that the work that they need to do in order to advance their organizations is fundamentally different than what they learned when they were in school 20 or 30 years ago. And so there has to be opportunities for them to re-engage with faculty and with the thought leadership that's coming out of higher education so that they can be prepared for that next segment of their personal career journeys.